Hello, this is Jaw1, and I'm looking at the One Year Bible reading for today. And today is day 67 of reading our One Year Bible together and looking at the New Testament reading, which is Mark 14, and it goes from 1 all the way through to verse 21. And I'm streaming from London. And the conference is over. I'm a little bit tired. A shout out to Ruth Naomi Floyd. I got to see her in concert. Packed house. Amazing voice, amazing singing. And right now I am, when I look at this passage, there's some things that really strike me about this passage. One is that some people use this passage to try to excuse their extravagance. Jesus acknowledges that the normal part of the life of the disciples would be that they would always have the poor with them. And I would say that if you have separated yourself so much from the poor that there is no love between who you are and people who are poor, you might have actually disconnected yourself from God. Look at Matthew 25, particularly the part where it talks about the sheep and the goats. If you don't have meaningful occasions to love the least of these, your soul might be in danger. And just be honest about that. But here we have something else, which is that love is extravagant. And Jesus extravagantly receives love. And I have to be honest, what's challenging my heart today is I'm not a very good receiver of extravagant love. And I think the person who has suffered the most from that dynamic is my dear loving wife. And I just apologize. I know that you love me so deeply and so dearly. And I sometimes freeze up and don't know what to do when your love feels so extravagant. And the other thing is, I'm realizing sometimes I quench my own ability to give love extravagantly. And so I realize that there's something in my own nature that joins this in this table of people who were indignant. And these kinds of statements, why waste such expensive, why go to so much cost? You know, you know, what about the poor? I mean, we know it's hard to enjoy the present moment if one's always thinking about the impact. If I spent this money on the poor, then that would be. And that can really kill a lot of joy out of life. And the particular point here is that Jesus says that this woman is marking something significant in history. And I think that gives me a real guideline, a guiding post, that we can mark our lives with historical significance. Historical significance may call for extravagance. And that's a good challenge to my mind, is saying that I can even check my mind and say, something that is of historical significance may actually require extravagant expressions of both giving and receiving love. That's a real challenge to my heart, and an area in my life that I need to continue to grow in. Judas doesn't respond very well to this. I even see that in this whole interaction, Judas kind of losing it in terms of his he loses his allegiance to Jesus. His allegiance to money takes over. His allegiance to positioning himself in terms of power takes over. And so he goes back to the priests and, they make a promise to him. We'll give you money if you betray Jesus. And, it was a significant amount of money for that time. Well, Jesus is not just hanging around. I mean, there are things that Jesus does that don't get fully explained. So, Jesus has already set up a situation where the Passover dinner is going to be sent, but he's got to be secretive. And so he has the disciples go and find these men that are carrying water, which is very unusual for that day. And they use that as a sign to figure out where they can have the Passover in a secret spot and not get caught. And then during this meal, Jesus lets Judas know that what Judas is trying to do in secret is not a secret to him. It's not a surprise. And he really confronts the danger that Judas is in. He tries to actually shake him off. And yet he doesn't threaten Judas. He just warns him that judgment will be terrible. And it would be better if the person had never been born. Judas, there are other ways the story could have played out. Judas could have been shaken and allowed himself to wake up and, someone else probably could have stepped in and filled that role and God's purposes still would have happened. But Judas went ahead with it. So one of the things that it speaks to me is that sometimes we are under the delusion that we could pursue some sinful path, some path of iniquity or evil or destruction, and somehow we get the delusion that God doesn't know what's going on. And actually God knows not only what's going on, but God knows the consequences of going down that path. And God would shake us up and say, whatever, the consequences, the ultimate consequences of sin are worth it. And that's the real. So, love you all. Continue to read the scriptures with us and keep the faith. One day at a time, y'all. And if you lose track of where we are, just jump in. Jump in where we are and continue to read with us. Don't feel guilt about missing some days. Continue. We're reading as a community, which means if you've missed a few days, the community has continued to read. You'll notice, some of I don't actually get to make this video every day. I try, but some days I can't pull it together. But I keep coming back, and God keeps working in my heart. when I look at the scriptures. Peace.